All right, this is part 2 of our video that is on rounding and estimation. So let's finish what we were talking about. We went back to the year and we found out that from 2030 to 1950, it was 80 years. Well, that's what we're going to plug in for x. So in other words, we're going to say y equals 0.16 times 80 plus 65.6. Now you can put that into your calculator. So you're going to put 0.16 times 80 plus 65.6, and that will give us what the life expectancy, if this continues using this chart, this would be our estimation. Obviously, we don't know for sure, but this is our estimation, and it would be about 78.4 years. All right, let's try one more example. We're going to go to a different chart. This one is the average cost of tuition and fees at public four-year colleges. Now, in this particular problem, we are looking at starting at the year 2000 and ending at the year 2020 with the average cost listed. So let's go down, and it says we want to find the estimate the yearly increase in tuition and fees. Now again, because it's yearly, that tells you that we're doing the same thing we did before, which is where we are trying to find the change in the cost of tuition, the change in tuition, divided by the change in time. That's what we did in the previous problem. So going back to this chart, we're looking at the year 2000, and then that would be its corresponding number, and the year 2020 with its corresponding number. So those are the numbers we're going to use, and we're going to do the same thing we just did in the previous problem. So to find the yearly increase, we had the year 2000, and that number that corresponded to it was 3349 or 3,349. And then we had the year 2020, and the number that went with that was 9349. Okay, now we do our math. Remember, we take the tuition and subtract them, highest minus the lowest in this case, and then we take the years, highest minus, that should be a minus just in case you're wondering what I did there, minus 2000. Okay, again, you can put these in parentheses if that helps. Some of the calculators will actually work with the parentheses. So you want to subtract these. Now, this is a nice even number, right? That actually comes out to just be an even 6,000. And then on the bottom, we have 20. So 6,000 divided by 20 gives us 300. And this is in dollars. This means that the average cost of tuition has been increasing by about $300 per year. Okay, well now we're going to use that to go down to part B. Part B says, well, write a mathematical model. What does a mathematical model mean? It means an equation. That's all it's asking. That estimates the average cost of tuition and fees, we're going to call that T, at a public four-year college for the school year ending X years after 2000. All this means is we want to create our equation like what we did before. So in this case, instead of y, remember how I wrote this down before? That was your generic equation, right? Well, in this case, it's saying, well, y is going to be t. We want to find out the tuition cost. We found out what our number was in before. It was 300. That goes in front of your x. Plus, and it would remember, we're using the very first number from the graph. That would be from the year 2000, and that would be the 3349. So this is how you do it. You set up your equation. This is what we found in part A that goes in front of the x. Technically, it's your slope. This number, okay, the 3349, is always the first number that we got from the chart. All right, now we can move on to part C, which says, all right, we'll use that model, use that equation to project the average cost from the year 2030. Well, again, I've got to do what we did before. the year 2030, all right, equals, so we're going to take 2030 minus the very first year from the chart, which was 2000. Okay, we're talking about 30 years then. So the year 2030 would represent 30 years for X. Now we plug it in. T equals 300 times 30, that's your X now, plus the 3349. And now what you're going to do is we're going to estimate. So you put that in your calculator. So that would give you 9,000 plus the 3349. So that would be $12,349. And that is what we are estimating for the tuition in 2030. All right, that takes us to the end of this section.